Hi, everybody. Welcome to another week of Pensado's Place. He's Dave Pensado. I'm Herb Charlick. And in a minute, we're going to go through the art of tracking with our guest, Bob Horn. But first, get out your calendars. We're calling all folks in Chicago and around the Midwest. Dave and I are going to be at Imsta Festa, Chicago. It's July 21st at 12 noon. It's free at the SAE campus downtown. Now, of course, when we come into town, we like to bring goodies. So we got lots of goodies to give away. We're going to have some friends pop through, some legendary folks from the Chicago music scene. We're going to do a hang with you afterwards, and we're going to have a good time. Our good buddies at Warm Audio and Sonarworks, Isotope, IK Multimedia, Melodyne, and Terrace, and Avid are stepping up. And by the time we get there, we'll add some more to the list. But you have to be there to make it good. So go to imsta.org, sign up, and we'll see you there. It's free. Don't delay. You want a seat in that theater. We're going to have a bunch of fun. If you're in the LA area, July 18th, which is a Wednesday, come by Westlake Pro around 2:30. Dave is going to be there, and he's going to answer all your questions about some speakers he utilizes called the amphions. Tell us about them.
Well, first of all, I fell in love with them the first minute I heard them. If I can make my mix sound good on those, they sound good everywhere.
Oh, good.
Mixes,
so there you go. It's a pretty good endorsement. Mark it down. Wednesday, July 18th, 2:30 to 4 o'clock at Westlake Pro in North Hollywood. Dave answering questions about amphion, information you can use. And now to our good friend. How are you, man?
Great. Thanks for having me.
So we thought, and since you've been doing so much of it, that it'd be great for our audience to bear down and get some details about the art of tracking.
Sure.
There are some folks who don't know about it at all and can make records without it, but it's an indispensable art, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
It's an art unto itself.
A lot of it's taken for granted these days, but it really shouldn't be.
Yeah. Bob, in case you guys don't know, is an incredible mix engineer. And we both sometimes lament the quality of the tracking we've been given, so it can definitely use an upgrade.
And it's also, for certain genres, a must.
Yeah,
like in rock records, you're going to track, right?
Absolutely.
Acoustic things, you're likely going to be
Even
tracking.
in the other worlds, people like to throw a little
Live
guitar
thing.
here.
Or vocals.
Yeah, but a lot of times they're inexperienced with it, and when it gets to the mixer, it can be an issue.
Do you have a general philosophy on tracking that, or is it situation by situation, instrument by instrument, project by project?
Yeah, I think it's situation by situation. It's just you got to put a lot of time in getting good at it. It's not just hitting the space bar and making sure it's not clipping. It's a lot more than that.
I mean, from positioning mics,
absolutely.
Room sounds, air,
choosing the right mic.
Exactly.
Al Schmidt's a genius at that. You change a mic on a vocalist, it's a totally different ball game, and your life is easier when it comes to the mix. Moving a mic 1 inch can make a drum sound worlds better.
Share with us your story is inspiring to me, because when you got out of Berkeley, you wanted to get more experience at tracking. So rather than coming to LA, take up the story from there.
Yeah, I went. Nashville, especially in 1998. 7 guys in a room, that listen to the demo tape once, go out in the room and knock it out in 2 or 3 takes, and everybody's on, and it's a lot of pressure for an assistant engineer, and everybody, and engineers got great sounds all around, and it's just people in the room, just all working together at once. So it's a different world, and out here it was a lot of drum machines at that time, and so I wanted to go someplace where I could at least learn from the best with microphones first, and then after a few years, come out here and pursue mixing.
You worked with Justin Niebank, though, didn't you, for a while?
I assisted him a few times, Steve Marcantonio, a bunch of different guys, so many great guys in Nashville, great studios too.
Cool. Yeah, by the way, the pictures of your studio, Echo Bar.
Recently, you've been doing a bunch of work for Atlantic, right?
Yeah, Craig Cowman, and we did some Kelly Clarkson stuff, and for a while we were doing kind of a Motown-esque thing with the house band, and we had just a crazy setup with 2 drum kits and drum machines and keyboards, and just trying to write for all of their artists, make tracks all day, and, so that was a lot of fun too.
So what were the tracking challenges with 2 drum sets?
Having enough of everything you need. Enough of the mics, and it's like they got one pair of overheads that you like to use. They don't have two pairs, so you got to choose. And, but it's it wasn't two drum kits at the same time. It was one at a time.
I figured.
But two totally different vibes. Different sounds.
You gotta have them both ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when you're tracking, you're going into an analog board. Are you?
That was at Glenwood Studios. All the Atlantic stuff that I had done was at Atlantic at Glenwood. At my studio, we just go through outboard preamps and gear, and then straight into Pro Tools. But the Atlantic stuff was either into their Neve 8068 or into their SSL.
Do you prefer one or the other?
The Neve is pretty awesome.
Really?
For tracking.
What's the difference?
It's a fat sound. It's just a lot cleaner circuitry. Everybody loves that Neve sound for warmth. You can carve it up later in the mix and make it smaller if you want, but it's harder to make a smaller sound bigger.
But you can actually hear the difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Being a mix engineer, when you track, are you trying to leave options for the mix engineer, or are you trying to get the sound perfect and let the mix engineer deal with a perfect mix, a perfect sound?
The latter. I try to get the sound that I would want if I was mixing. For a few reasons. One, when everyone comes into the control room to listen back, I want it to sound. It's not going to sound like a mix, but I want it to sound, really, really good. I don't want to just have that excuse like, oh, I made it natural so they can EQ it later. Like, I want people to be inspired in the headphones.
Is that an old school concept? Because it seems like it is, doesn't it?
I've heard people do both ways. Like, they'll just cut things with no EQ and leave it for later. But you just want people to be inspired by their own sound when they playing their guitar. They want it to sound like $1,000,000.
If you got a sound you like, commit to it. We'll make it work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever have to divorce the fact that you're a mix engineer while you're tracking?
Only in overdoing things, like especially compression. Like, I don't use a lot of compression when tracking like drums and guitars. I kind of leave that for later. But EQ, it's an open game. Whatever.
Is there any instrument that gives you a particular set of challenges in terms of miking them or prepared? Is there something that's trickier than something else?
Piano's one of the hardest.
Really?
Yeah. And
tell me why.
It's because, number one, you're dealing with two mics, and they have the low to high strings, but they're not all in order. They like cross. You got the low strings and then high strings underneath it, and you got the lid creates this nasty reflection, and sometimes you actually take the lid off if the studio lets you and put it across the room. But, getting those two mics to where when you sit in front of the speakers, they can go left to right with the keys, and there's no weird spots or cancellations, no loud keys. You get a mic too close over a few keys, whenever they play those, all of a sudden they jump out. So
let me
that's
see
a
if
challenge.
I understand what you're saying. So what you're saying is that we should all use piano sample packs instead of real pianos, right?
Use keyscapes.
Which is your sample pack, actually, or should be.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Do you ever feel like sometimes mix engineers, we just whine about stuff for no reason at all?
Yeah, we got a wine. We got nothing else.
I concur.
It's a joy to pull up beautifully recorded tracks and mix them. It's just.
You know what? Tell me if you do this, because for me, I feel the same way. But I love it when I pull up a session and there's a clear-cut vision for where I need to go. Like, you get some sessions and you don't know, like I'm working on one right now, I don't need to know if I need to go more R&B or more pop or more youthful or more wet, more dry. And I don't have any markers inside the session to tell me. But some sessions, it feels like when they're tracked really, really well, there's a clear-cut vision of where to go, and it just all falls into place.
Yeah, I think that's kind of natural. If you work harder at getting the sounds that you want to hear, then it's kind of like the mix is kind of already speaking to you.
Like the dance world, like the EDM world, you know what they want.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And then in the tracking, sphere, when you're doing vocals, that's a completely different mindset, correct?
Yeah, and there's a lot of challenges for the guys that, the producers that have their own studio, or engineers, or the young guys that, you know, they usually buy and invest in one microphone, and they kind of force that on everybody, and they kind of think, oh, well, I paid $2,000 for it, it's going to be great on everybody, and if it's slightly different, I can EQ it. But if they had 5 mics that they could audition, they would realize how wrong that is. You know,
what would be your 5 go-to mics?
M49 Neumann, definitely. I really like the Lewitt LCT 940 tube mic for the warm side of things.
Yeah, I use that a lot.
Is that the one that's got the switch
FET
between the
tube
FET and tube?
adjustment? Yeah. The Neumann M269 is a wonderful mic. The famous Telefunken 251, and probably something modern and bright like the AK-47 Telefunken or something like that.
Then you have the ability to capture a wide range, a wide set of emotions.
Absolutely.
Because if the vocalist doesn't feel good and doesn't like their sound, you're off to a bad start.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's everything.
Right.
It's like what they're hearing in the headphones, how the lights are in the room. You know, everything makes them sing differently.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I don't get. Well, I work next door to him, but I can't ask him these questions until I invite him here or you invite him here.
Gotcha.
How do I detect distortion at the mic input, and then here again as the mic goes into the mic preamp distortion, or coming out of the preamp into, say, a compressor? What does capsule and mic distortion sound like, and how can we get better at detecting that as opposed to preamp distortion? It's all the mic gain.
Preamp distortion is easier to detect because it just sounds like, you know, clipping, and a lot of times we have meters unless we're using something like an old Neve, and then you just got to use your ears. And I tend to get a level and then click one down just for safety, you know. But mic distortion, distorting the capsule with air pressure or
bad tubes
or distorting the tube, that's harder to hear. And sometimes, you know, there's this famous thing that happens with everybody where you ask the singer, what's the loudest you're going to sing on this song? And they give you that audition, but then when they start doing it, their adrenaline kicks up and it's even louder. So again, like just going a little lower. But I've had rap vocals. You would think rapping is quieter than singing. In a lot of cases, it's not. It's, you know, and
Because you're being yelled at.
yeah, and some guys, you know, they blow up those U67s and some of those mics, and then it's just hit with so much pressure, it gets crunchy, and sometimes it's too late because when you were getting the sound, you know, they were more conservative. But it's really, I mean, you can put a pad on if the mic has a pad, and sometimes you just got to change the mic. You know, a lot of those old mics, you get a loud rapper or really loud singer, and they're just belting, and they don't have that you know, mic technique where they can back up and stuff. It's they're just going to blow out the mic, and there's nothing you can do except change the mic.
Do you find yourself, or do you leave it to the producer? Let's say you're doing vocals with somebody. Do you end up giving that vocalist tips on how to utilize a mic, backing off, mouthing it?
If they don't already do mic technique, throwing that at them when they're trying to get the song right is difficult. They're going to forget. They could overdo it. So it's kind of a technique that is learned over time. So if they don't already have it, I generally just hope for the best.
And plan B, part B of that question is, let's say you're tracking on behalf of a rock group that tracks all the time.
Yeah.
And they have preset notions of what they think is their sound that's good, but you've got some ideas that they should try, or you think would improve things, or get them close to things. Do you interject those ideas? Do you try to show them what it could be? Do you leave it alone?
If there's time and you know, their personality allows for it, then absolutely. Like, you know, I'm a big fan of giving people what they want and an alternative if it's appropriate. You know, like that way, if they don't like the alternative, in 2 seconds we're back to what they like.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So
How often are you requested, like at the level of the Atlantic sessions, how often are you requested to use auto-tune on the way in? So in other words, the singer would monitor him or herself through auto-tune, and then you print that. How often does that happen?
I kind of developed my own idea on that, and it seems to fit with the singer. And what that is on songwriting sessions where the songwriter isn't going to be the final singer, they usually they want the auto-tune recorded along with the track, so it's permanent.
Okay.
And it's easier for me because we don't have to have a million auto-tunes, you know, in there. And then when it's a record, the actual artist recording it, if they want auto-tune in their ears, I'll put it on the track so it can be adjusted later, because it's a record, and if you do too much or too little, you get, you know, you're stuck. So.
And another question, what's your position on performance versus perfection? I tend to like about 80% performance and 20% perfection. When you're trying to record a vocal or an instrument like a violin where there can be changes in pitch, what's your take on that?
So much performance, as long as they're kind of close to where you know, okay, if I alter this later with a great plugin like Melodyne or something, it's still going to sound natural. They're not 3 notes off or something, you know. But
you recorded me before.
but yeah, I mean, performance it's everything. If it doesn't feel good, but it's perfectly in tune, people aren't going to gravitate towards it. You know?
Good point.
Horns. Got a big horn section. Challenging.
Yeah.
He is Bob Horn.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
Room comes into play a lot, and then the decision to either isolate or keep them as a section. And if you isolate, it's a lot easier to deal with mix-wise, but
because you have control.
But it's a different vibe,
right?
You know, when you put them in a room, like our room is very live sounding, so you put them in that room, you make that decision. That sound it's that sound.
That's what it is.
You're stuck with it, but you know, I'll do things like, you line up guys in a row like this, you know, trumpet, saxophone, trombone, and I'll put baffles up to the edge of their horn. So the horns are all together, the end of the trumpet's the end of the trombone, but the physical person is in between the baffle, and that seems to somewhat separate them, but also kind of keep them together as far as the room mics are concerned. And they like to, you know, be able to hear the guy next to them, and they don't want to be in booths if they don't have to be. But
do you like ribbon mics on horns?
Ribbon mics are great. On brass, on saxophones, I like tube condensers. But the danger with the tube condensers is they pick up a lot of the brass leaking into the saxophone mics. So that's.
Are you always miking where the sound comes out of the horn, or you sometimes mic near the embouchure or near the?
For saxophones, the actual the side where most of the keys are, and kind of that with a mixture of a little bit of the bell, because if the keys are open, you know, you don't have them all pushed down to play a D or low E or something, then that's the only time the sound's fully coming out of the horn is when all the keys are closed. When they're open, it's, you know, coming out of the sides, the top, everywhere. So kind of miking it from their, if they're holding it right here, coming down from this side on all the keys and the horn.
Like with Miles, whenever you see him recording, the mic's always right in front of the bell.
Brass, it only comes right out the end, so it's a lot more direct.
Is it like a guitar speaker where if you go more towards the edge, you get more dull, and more towards the middle, it gets more bright?
Yeah, absolutely.
On a trumpet, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So brass is kind of like a human. It only comes out of the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing with brass players, though, the brass players is they move. So
do humans.
Yeah,
but that's
right.
Sorry, I'll get off that.
No, I like this track. We can do it into the
Oh no, that's the problem.
What about synthesizers? We don't ever think about tracking electronic instruments like synthesizers, but there is a right and wrong way to do it. We've discussed it before. What's your take on it? Should you use a direct box all the time?
It depends. You record, if you're in a pro studio or you have a really good preamp, then a direct box feeding into a mic pre is great. I like for synths, I like the preamps that have 1/4-inch inputs on them. So, like I have a tube locomotive pre that has 2 1/4-inch inputs, and it's great. Get that kind of
locomotive from our buddy down in St. Louis. Oh,
yeah, it's kind of get a tube sound on that synth on the way in, and you have to deal with direct boxes and a bunch of cables, but. A lot of the biggest mistakes with people that use analog synths is if they have some of the interfaces that have like the Focusrite or the the old inboxes, Digio 3s, all that kind of stuff. They have 1/4-inch inputs on them, and they'll just take the synths right into those, and sometimes it's a mismatch of ohms and stuff, impedance, yeah. And I know you've heard guitars plugged straight in without a DI into one of those, and they're not happening.
Yeah.
So you just got to watch out for that.
What's your favorite DI?
The Countryman. That
Still,
thing. Yeah.
thing's been around forever.
For a while, I thought it was different, and then I did a big A to B test with like 20 DIs, and that Countryman, it stood out. Yeah.
Yeah, A Designs makes a nice one too.
Oh yeah.
In the Bob Horn pantheon of tracking, what's the greatest, most challenging mic setup session you've had?
I did a 17-piece band in Capital A, which is their biggest studio, and it was a film shoot at the same time with six cameras. And the biggest challenge was the drums getting into everyone else's mics. We had a grand piano, and one thing about a grand piano is that lid is designed to project like a megaphone.
Yeah.
Back from the days when they didn't have microphones and stuff. And it also collects sound. So that snare drum is just getting straight into the piano, and then percussion mics, horn mics. We were in this nice Capital A studio with all these amazing microphones, and I went with live sound mics on the horns because all the big tube condensers were just sucking in that snare drum from across the room.
You mean like a dynamic mic with a small cardioid pad?
Yeah, like a Sennheiser 421. I started with U87s, and it was all snare drum. Almost as loud as the horn itself. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was. We also did. It was 18 songs 3 times in one day. So 56 performances, something like that.
Oh my God.
And everyone has to be smiling every take. They had 3 sets of clothes because they would be sweating. Every input on the 60-channel Neve was filled.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there were fist fights by the end of the day. People hate each other.
The Lenny Castro, a real famous percussionist, he literally bled on the congas.
You're kidding. So many takes.
It was so many takes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
So that was for
How
artists.
Mike Blood.
I was going to say the very same thing.
Bob, so the simple fact that you're here kind of means that you do care about education. What are some of the educational initiatives that you're part of?
I just kind of do tutorials, a lot on mixing, occasionally on tracking. I did a big one with my studio partner Eric Reichers for Warren Hewart's Produce Like a Pro, and that was I think a 16-hour course, 2 full days of bottom to top to bottom tracking, everything from picking the right mics, arranging the song, different parts, and a lot of people like that. And I just we just released a series of mix reviews where we have people submit songs, and we pick one, take their multi-track, and we literally put 2 of their multi-tracks in one session, make one red and one blue, and we mix their song. And then we do A-Bs, instrument by instrument. So we'll play their bass and talk about everything they did, plugin by plugin, and then we'll play our bass and show what we did differently. And
that's pretty cool.
sometimes it's a one's better than the other. Other times it's just an option. Like they did this, we decided to go this way, and then at the end we compare the whole mix, and it's a real.
So if they beat you, you give them their money back?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think so.
We try to pick songs that we feel like we can lend some help to, and definitely teach some stuff too. So that stuff's on Group 3.
Our friend Asa Doyle at Group 3. What's up, Asa? It's our boy. And then are you still mixing as well? Not just tracking. So that's going simultaneously. You got them both going.
Yeah. Probably more mixing. I'm also producing 3 projects right now.
Oh, good.
So doing a lot of playing and performing as well,
cool.
which is fun.
What's your go-to instrument?
Drums, bass, guitar, and a little bit of enough keys to fake it.
Gotcha.
Bob has a special illness that I'm going to embarrass the hell out of him, that a lot of people don't understand. It's called percussion Tourette's. Like some people just blurt stuff out. While I'm talking, do a percussion Tourette's real quick. No, do the full one, Bob. Come on, man.
It's too much embarrassment.
Bob. His timing's immaculate. Bob doesn't self-promote like some of our friends do, and Bob just had the #1 song on the Billboard 200 the first time a K-pop band or a Korean band's ever made it to number one.
It was the number
BTS.
one album.
Yeah, number one album.
Yeah.
And you worked on that album. And congratulations, my
thank you.
friend. I'm
Thank you
real
very
happy for you for that.
In LA, let's use LA since we're based here. What are your favorite live rooms?
The NRG room. I don't know if it's studio. It might be Studio B, but it's the Moroccan room they call it, and it has the two Neves sandwiched together. That room's phenomenal.
Amazing.
For when you just want an endless big reverb. You know, the farther away you back the mics up, the more reverb you have. The natural room. Our room turned out great. I love our room.
Amen.
I was just Henson Studio B is a great live room. There's so many good live rooms. They all have their different characters. That's what's great about them.
Because you would think there wouldn't be that many live rooms around, but there really are a bunch of live rooms. Because studios used to be made with live rooms, and they're sitting there. waiting
Yeah,
to be
a lot
done.
of times when a studio is constructed, the live room is considered too expensive and not utilized enough to return on investment, which is sad.
One of the best ever, I think, was Dave Way's The Pass.
Oh, yeah.
That live room is magical.
Yeah, Larrabee owned it for a while, too.
Yeah.
We called it Larrabee East, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Doug, somebody built that room. I can't remember Doug's name. Sorry, Doug.
So composing, better for you to build around something established. Are you collaborating on those songs now, or is that stuff that you like to do, or you rather just sort of produce the music?
I'm actually doing both. One of the projects I'm doing, I could just kind of, I'm allowed to just do it, and then I present it and make a couple little changes, if that. The other one, literally kind of co-producing with the artist, step by step. And I learn more from, I learn different things from doing both. You know, when you're left to your own devices, sometimes it's more challenging because you don't have the luxury of someone telling you, do this, and you just do it.
Right.
So you got to think of everything. And then the other one, sometimes the challenge is you want to do something that they don't want. You know, so I kind of enjoy both.
I think what you just embodied is the fact that this business is about constantly evolving. Like you don't just sort of sit and stay put. Otherwise, it can pass you, or you can't keep up or something. But now with technology and the other kinds of things, there's no reason not to push forward. Would you agree? Would you say that's
you got to be able to morph to different situations, and it's otherwise you'll just be doing the same thing all the time, and people will get bored of that. And you'll get bored.
You'll get bored of it. It shows in your work.
Speaking of moving forward, if you were a young kid or an old kid, and your parents left and you wanted to record a drummer in their living room, how would you mic it with only 3 mics?
I would probably try the well-known Glenn Johns technique, where you mic the kick, and then you gotta watch a YouTube video on how to do it right. But there's kind of a mic overhead and then a mic on the side where the floor tom is, and that works pretty well at capturing everything. I've also been a fan of 4 mics, 2 overheads, snare, top snare, and kick. And
That's classic.
yeah, you can kind
But
of.
it can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you can even do things like if you make sure the overheads get the whole kit and not just the cymbals, like instead of coming straight down, kind of come at an angle from behind the drummer. Then you can even go in and play samples every time there's a tom hit and layer that and blend that in if you really want to get into that later. And bottom snare if you didn't have an extra mic for bottom snare, so you can work with it. And even with the 4 mics by themselves, it can sound great.
Now, because you have a #1 album doesn't mean that you're not susceptible to getting your ass kicked in batter's box. That's
very true.
So we're not, we don't go light on you and you're a friend. So, you ready for this?
I think I peeked at it on the way over, though.
You peeked or you peed on it?
I peed on it. He peeked on it.
Okay, cool. Did you guys do that together?
Yeah.
Let's get away from that.
I tricked him here, but I gave him a list that I'm not going to use, and this is a completely
that's
separate
good.
list.
That's
Why you
good.
let me know that?
Yeah, so this will not be about tracking.
I got to win one of these things before I die.
All righty, tee
So
it
are
up.
we doing hardware tracking or plug-in?
Well, I'm going to say
mixing?
an instrument, and you tell me the mic and the mic pre you would
okay.
choose for that instrument. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Kick.
Okay, API 512 or the VP26, and then the Lewitt Rex 640, the dual capsule.
Give me the pre first and then the mic.
Okay.
Okay. Vocals, female.
First choice would be Neve 1073 and U47.
Acoustic guitar.
Millennium Mike Pre, and let's see, probably the Lewitt LCT 940.
Snare.
Let's see, preamp. 1073 preamp, and SM57's top and bottom.
Piano.
Piano. Millennium Mike Pre's or Martech Mike Pre's, and Neumann M269s.
Love the Martex. Percussion.
Percussion. API Pre's are really good on that. Microphones, it kind of depends. Congas, 421s, a lot of small diaphragm condensers, like the Audio-Technica stuff is great.
Strings. No decatrees.
The DPA mics, which usually are done with decatrees, those are awesome. Omnis. But Mike Pre's probably Martex if I can get them.
Yeah, they're expensive.
Yeah.
Bass.
Bass. My favorite is just DI into the AMEC 9098 Mike Pre EQ.
Cymbals.
The Mog Audio EQ Pre 2, I think it's called. And then the audio, anything from the Audio-Technica 4000 series.
What was the cheapest mic you used on a record that did well?
A knockoff of the Shure Elvis mic, the E55. It wasn't a Shure. It was some, I don't even know what brand. I don't think it's had a brand on it. But that for a vocal.
Did it sound okay?
It sounded, it was a character.
The producing side of you. Natural outgrowth, something you wanted to do, just came up, somebody asked. How'd it come about?
Somebody asked, that got me back into it this year. I tried going full-on producer many years ago, and it's hard to, when you're doing the method of making tracks and finding writers. When you're not established, there's this catch-22 of getting good writers. So you end up having better instrumentals than the song ends up.
Yeah, shitty songs, good tracks.
But I actually found out I kind of like the other way, where the song's already written and I'm actually producing rather than composing. So you kind of have someone lay down, the song with piano vocal or guitar vocal and then produce around it. And this year I just had found one artist with a buddy of mine that we decided to develop, and then two other artists just approached me about production, and just kind of getting back into it and really enjoying it. But over the years of being an engineer, you always, you're recording a guitar player, and you might play a guitar and be like, give me that, I can do it.
I do it better than you. Does one thing inform the other?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, because it's hard to. They're not separate boxes, right? They bleed over into in other things. So.
Yeah, I mean, especially, and this is why guys like Tim Pierce are so good. The session guys, being able to engineer and be a musician and also a producer, you end up with, like we were talking before, better sounds, like, and even playing better. Like, if you attack the guitar with the pick this way, or you play a bass like this, you already know how it's going to sound as a mixer in the end. If you change that up and do it differently, so things like that, it all's cohesive. That's why I've always believed engineers should also be musicians, if at all possible. Yeah.
Congrats, man. I think it's. I think as a specialist, you've always been one of those guys who, no matter where it goes, you always sort of step up and have a level of expertise that people recognize. So it's great to have you back on. It's great to go down the road of tracking and figure out what it is. Dave, take us home.
Okay. In my opinion, if you're trying to have influence over a creative project like music, I think tracking is the way to do it. The tracking engineer makes way more creative decisions than the mix engineer does, and we're gifted and limited by what the tracking engineer does. I think a vital skill to have to make yourself a better mix engineer is to spend a couple of years getting your tracking skills together, right?
Absolutely.
Got the seal of approval from Bobby Ninja. We'll see you next week.
Bobby Ninja.